Almost 6 years ago, one of the worst transfer swap deals transpired between Arsenal and Manchester United. Somehow, both players as well as the clubs came worse off and became the laughing stocks of the transfer window. But this only happened in hindsight because before the deal was struck, it made a lot of sense on paper. Back in 2018, Alexis Sanchez was at the height of his popularity and being compared to Eden Hazard as the best player in the Premier League, whilst Henrik Mkhitaryan was struggling to get game time under Mourinho. So then what prompted Arsenal to agree to a swap deal without any money involved? Surely they were getting the shorter end of the stick. Well, this was far from a simple swap deal. It was a complex saga that began when Alexis Sanchez refused to sign a new contract in the summer of 2017. By the winter transfer window of the 2017-18 season, with just 6 months left on his contract, he made it clear he was ready to move on. Arsenal realized they had to offload him by any means necessary. Henrik Mkhitaryan was on the opposite end of the spectrum and had to be practically forced out of Manchester United to allow the arrival of Sanchez. Even though he wasn't getting regular minutes at United, Mkhitaryan loved the club and wanted to prove his worth there. It was a sad affair for United fans as they witnessed someone who loved the club being forced out of it. Arsene Wenger had his fair share of differences with the Chilean winger and was content with his exit. In his eyes, the swap deal was losing a world-class player just to gain another one. He couldn't have been more wrong. In 2017, when Sanchez wasn't keen on signing a new contract with just a year left on his existing deal, European clubs smelt blood. Bayern Munich were the first ones to publicly flirt with the idea of signing him, but their interest cooled down as soon as they heard the winger's wage demands. They moved on to sign Serge Gnabry from Werder Bremen and brought James Rodriguez on a 2-year loan from Real Madrid. Then came Manchester City, with Guardiola pushing to be reunited with his ex-Barcelona player. Arsenal had quoted an overall price of £60 million for Sanchez, which City had agreed to. This was after Wenger had spent the entire summer insisting he wasn't for sale in the hopes that he might sign a new contract. But another bizarre transfer idea was brewing at the Arsenal headquarters, which was confirmed when they publicly bid £92 million to sign AS Monaco's Thomas Lemar. In classic Arsenal fashion, this bid was 3 times more than what they had bid just a month ago in July. Their initial £30 million offer was promptly rejected by Monaco. The club had sold Bernardo Silva, Benjamin Mendy, Bakayoko and Alan Saint-Maximin among many others. By the end of the window, the market value of their remaining gems had gone up substantially. So after a summer-long pursuit by Arsenal, Monaco finally caved in 2 days before the transfer window shut. The concerned parties quickly met and struck up a deal that would see Lemar join Arsenal while Sanchez left for City. Arsenal had agreed personal terms with Lemar very early on, so the only final confirmation was required from the player himself. But time was of the essence, with mere hours left before the window closed. Lemar had been called up to the French squad and was due to play at night. The club representatives reached out to the player hours before he was supposed to play and were shocked to see Lemar refuse the move because it was too stressful on the last day before his match. The chain reaction of this implied that Sanchez wouldn't move to City and the deadline day deal collapsed. Wenger was blamed for taking too long to decide, as was the Arsenal board for waiting until the end to agree a deal. But the season continued with Sanchez at Arsenal on his way to run down the contract and move for free next year. The months went by and City were still considered favourites to snap him up in the winter. In November, Manchester United hinted that no transfer business should be expected in January 2018. As the winter transfer window opened and Sanchez had no intention of signing a new contract, his sale became the club's top priority. An asking price of £35 million was set, but the problem was the player's exorbitant wage demands. Sanchez knew he was a world-class player and wanted to make sure he spent his prime years earning as much as possible. An athlete's earning graph is very steep, so you can't blame them for making the most of their relatively shorter professional careers. When Guardiola heard that he wanted to become the highest earner at City, he flat out refused to break the club's wage structure and risk inflating future demands from players. This is where United came in with their irresponsible financial management and an obsession with beating City everywhere but on the pitch. Mourinho wanted him, but played it cool in front of the press, donning a whatever happens, happens attitude. Where Guardiola had deterred, United agreed to make the player the league's highest earner, with a contract rumoured to be worth up to £500,000 a week, including all bonuses and image right payments. The base pay was close to £350,000, making him earn £60,000 more than the second highest earner, Paul Pogba. A £20 million signing on fee was also agreed upon. Negotiations kicked off between the two clubs, agreeing that Sanchez was worth around £30 to £35 million. Wenger initially inquired about Martial being included in an exchange, but the idea was swiftly rejected by United. Instead, Ed Woodward and Mourinho explained how Mkhitaryan, who was the same age as Sanchez and had 2 years left on his contract, had a similar market value. Even though the Armenian had fallen out of favour under Mourinho, United knew that Wenger had tried to sign him from Dortmund in 2016. Once it was agreed that a player exchange was possible, Arsenal insisted on being paid cash as well, because they felt Sanchez should be valued at a higher price than an out-of-favour Mkhitaryan. But United played on Arsenal's desperation to move him on and made them agree to a straight swap. For Arsenal and Wenger, it was always desirable to get a player in exchange instead of cash. The logic was that Sanchez barely had any value left in the last months of his contract, and getting 30 to 35 million wouldn't be enough to buy another replacement in the winter. Ivan Gazidis, the Arsenal CEO, had earlier proposed an exchange to City as well, which would have seen Sterling move to the London club. But his red-hot form for City made it impossible to agree. That's why when Mkhitaryan was included in the deal, Arsenal readily agreed. But then another problem arose. You see, Mkhitaryan didn't exactly want to move to Arsenal. The United management was firm, explaining that even if he refused, they'd bring in Sanchez with cash, potentially pushing him further down the pecking order. They offered a tempting alternative, agreed to the move to London for a pay rise and more playing time. He was eventually persuaded just 2 days before the deal was announced, but it was clear he was pressured to leave. But the small disappointment of losing him was quickly washed over with the excitement of signing a world-class player in the winter window, which was a rare occurrence. The club justified his exorbitant wages by claiming he arrived free of cost, which allowed for the possibility of a higher wage budget. All in all, United were very satisfied with the deal. The proven Premier League goalscorer and world-class winger should have had no problems at his new club. He had played well for Arsenal, Barcelona and Udinese in the past. Why would another move be any problem? He was supposed to make a deadly trio with Rashford and Lukaku up front, but right from the very beginning, something was off. It wasn't a case of him not working hard enough for the team, but something just wouldn't click for Sanchez at his new club. It was an astonishing sight to witness week after week. Mourinho's pragmatic approach was blamed for the winger's low output at first. Martial and Rashford struggling in the same period made it an easy reason to cite for the new signings' underwhelming performances. United's new number 7 was supposed to spearhead a title charge, or at least give their city rivals a headache, but instead, they got a shadow of his former self, always out of sync with the team. Maybe it was because United lacked a creative genius to feed him opportunities. At Arsenal, Sanchez could always count on Mesut Ozil to craft chances and create the attack. Under Mourinho though, there was no true number 10 role, so Sanchez had to adapt to new responsibilities. The team relied more on counter-attacks than patient build-up play. It became a rare sight to see flashes of the old Sanchez. With each passing game and underwhelming performance, his exorbitantly high wages came to bite him back with high expectations. He was caught in the cycle of poor performances, increasing pressure due to his wages and shortening fan patience with him. Soon his wages were broken down from the usual per week metric to per minute, per touch, and per goal calculations. Social media would be crawling with such posts after every bad performance. But it became unbearable when Mourinho was replaced by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, with Rashford and Martial coming back to their previous best form from before Mourinho. But Sanchez remained the same, if not worse. He couldn't put up a good performance for the new manager, and it was finally accepted that the problem lied in him. He also faced a lot of harsh criticism when the club struggled due to many other reasons. He was made the scapegoat the same way as Pogba and Mourinho were. On the other hand, Mkhitaryan's new job started brilliantly on the first day. His debut against Everton saw him bag 3 assists in the game, but unfortunately, That would be the highlight of his time in London, as in September 2019, he left on loan for AS Roma. Even under Emery, he couldn't put up consistent performances and had to be replaced. He moved to Roma on a free transfer in September 2020. Sanchez left for the Serie A poetically at the same time as his swap deal counterpart in 2019. He went on loan to Inter, while United continued to contribute more than half of his wages. He mutually agreed to tear up his contract with the club and signed a new one with Inter with a massive pay cut. The swap deal proved to be one of the worst deals in Premier League history for everyone involved. United were also blamed for destroying another world-class player like they had done before. Why do you think Sanchez never really worked out at United? Can you think of a worse transfer deal than this one? Let us know in the comments below.